To be here, I have to say I'm Catherine Nicholson from the virtual training team. I'm the creative director here. And what you need to know about us, just to give a bit of context for what I'm about to share with you, is that we do deliver and design live events, like Christopher said. So most of what we do is virtual training. So VILT, V-I-L-T, virtual instructor-led training. We also do ILT now that we're out of the pandemic. And we do VRILT, virtual reality instructor-led training, is something that we're really exploring right now. And everything that underpins that is about creating engagement and performance and happiness for our participants. And they're interconnected, because if you think about it, if you can create a learning experience that boosts performance, then individuals as a result of that will also be more engaged and happier in their work. If we can boost their engagement in their work, they're more likely to perform better and be happier. So they're all interlinked. And what we've learned over the years that is really important, that in order to really boost the effectiveness of those live instructor-led events, we need to wrap around those what we call learning nudges, which I think is really interesting, because we've had snackable learning, bite-sized learning, micro-learning. We use the term nudges, and we use that intentionally because every nudge, whether it's a micro-learning nudge or a micro-comms nudge, the purpose is to nudge learners towards whatever the outcome is that we're looking to achieve out of that whole learning workshop or program. And what I'd love to share with you is some of the things that we've been doing to inspire you around 5 particular touch points that help actually bring participants to the event in the best way possible, to make the event itself really engaging, and then to make sure that we're doing things to support them in embedding the learning beyond the learning event itself. So it starts here. I'm intrigued. So what we're trying to achieve here is for participants to be intrigued to even sign up to some learning, or maybe they've been encouraged to sign up, and we want them to be intrigued by the fact that they've been signed up for some learning. So what can we do at this point? So the way that we look at it here at VTT is, what can we do to support our clients with internal marketing campaigns to help people really want to engage with learning? And I think it'd be quite helpful for me to share as well that we literally work across pretty much every region and every industry. And all of this applies across all of those. So if you're thinking, would that work in my industry or my field? I think all of this will, but what you might find useful is just to tweak it a little bit depending on, for example, the tone of voice that's relevant for your industry, or even just like how the tech works on your LMS, for example. But in theory, what we're trying to do here is get people excited to want to sign up to some learning. So this could be a poster campaign, whether that's virtual or face-to-face, where there's a QR code that takes them to some sort of learning tab that gets them to understand what the learning is about, gets them intrigued to think about, this is for me. Maybe we've got some previous feedback case studies or learner comments about what they found useful as part of that. And often what we do as well is like a little mini micro comms video that says, this is why you absolutely need to sign up for this learning. This is why it's of great benefit to you. And you know as well as I do, when you buy something or you commit to something, you get that dopamine hit. It's like, yes, brilliant, I'm excited. But the challenge is with learning is you might sign up for some learning today, but the event might not be for 2 months down the line. So that dopamine hit has sort of petered maybe a little bit. So the next stage to consider is, what do we do to make sure that people are committed to actually turning up to the session? Now, I want to share a specific example here, because we had a global client of ours, a huge biotech company, that had a challenge that they came to us for help with. Their challenge was they were putting out there workshops and programs for people to sign up to, and they were signing up. There was waiting lists, but the challenge was only 50% of people actually turned up on the day, which was a real shame, and it was costly because there was waiting lists. People would have happily taken those places. So we tested out 3 different ways to get people to commit to actually turn up. And they were pretty much equally successful, actually. And we were inspired by some work from Robert Cialdini. Some of you may have heard of him, amazing psychologist who's done loads of research in the power and science and psychology of influence. And he talks about a situation in Chicago where there was a restaurant, and the restaurant had a problem because they were having 30% no-show rate. So people would book to come along, book a table, but 30% of people weren't showing up, and they were tables that were lost when other people might have taken them if they'd have cancelled. So when they looked into it, they said to the receptionist who was taking these bookings, like, what do you say to people when they call in? And she said, I do say to them, if you can't make it, please will you let us know if you need to cancel. But still 30% of people weren't. So she was asked to just change what she said a tiny bit. And instead of just saying, please let us know if you need to cancel, she would say, will you please let us know if you need to cancel? And then waited for an answer. And when people said yes, which of course they always did, what they found is the no-show rate went from 30% to 10%. And this is all about the science of commitment. We like to be consistent with the commitments that we make, even if they're quite small. So we decided to use that science in the way that we got people to commit to showing up to the actual training events. So the first thing we did was really simple. And by the way, what we found with our client is they were doing the classic thing, and many of you have probably done this or seen this, is like, well, I'm sending out reminder emails. But what do people do with a reminder email? They go, oh yeah, delete, snooze. So instead, we were sending out reminder emails, but with an action. So you had to respond to say, yes, I'm still coming, or no, I can't make it. So at least then the coordination team could see who was coming and who wasn't. Really simple. The second one we did was, and this company had quite a fun culture about them. So this one was multiple choice, and it was just a case of, yes, I'm definitely coming in, I can't wait. No, I'm devastated that I can't make it. Or I'm still trying to figure it out. Please bear with me. But again, it gave the coordination team some data, some responses to follow up with, some opportunities to fill those seats if they weren't taken. And then the final one, which was my particular favorite, is we just sent a little video. It was 20 seconds long. And it was a video saying something along the lines of, look, you've booked onto this training. You must want it. You know that it's useful to you. Please give yourself the time that you deserve to come along and invest in your own learning and development. And in order to confirm your booking, please click this button in the email. And there was just 3 questions that took 20 seconds. It was I'm coming, or I'm not coming. And then it was, these are the challenges that I face around this particular topic. And these are the things that I'd really like to learn to benefit from on this topic. So it had like a double whammy benefit, in that we got people to confirm that they were coming, but also they started to think about why they were coming. Quite interestingly, yes, it absolutely boosted attendance levels, but also there were some occasions when we had enough people say, actually, I can't make it. There's like an all company or an all region meeting that I need to attend, that gave us enough advance warning to cancel and reschedule. And so that's the whole getting people to commit to showing up piece that we've been looking at. So I'm intrigued to sign up. I'm committed to turn up. And then the third one is I'm engaged when I arrive. So this is about helping people arrive to the learning event knowing precisely why they're there. They're curious to find out more. They want to be there. They know what to expect. Often for many learning programs, this is what the sort of pre-learning section is all about of a program. We don't like to call it pre-learning. It feels like, or pre-work, even worse. It sounds like homework. We just use this idea of a learning nudge. So we often use 7 taps for this. Thank you, 7 taps. We love you. And what we do here is to give people a bit of an insight into what they can expect from the session and why they want to be there, and to pique their curiosity, getting them to think about their own context. And then, of course, the context around maybe boosting their curiosity with a further resource or something they might want to explore before they come along. And in terms of context, I just want to share something here that we do here at VTT, which we found is particularly useful. We encourage participants to think about the why are we here, but also the why am I here? So what we mean by that is the big picture context. So say we were running a workshop on critical thinking. I think it's really helpful for individuals to know, like, why do people need to know about how to think more critically in this day and age? But also it's really helpful from a personal level to think about, why do I need to think? more critically in my world, in my role. And then you've got that buy-in. I often think of it, I'm quite a visual person, as like the layers of the brain have opened up like an onion and ready for the learning to then go in, because we know exactly the context of why we're there and where to start that knowledge and learning when it comes. Okay, so they're here now. They're intrigued to sign up, they're committed to turn up, and they're engaged when they arrive. So now we think about the actual learning event itself. Now, I'm sure that you've got loads of ideas of micro nudges and learnings and comms and activities that you can do as part of a learning event, and that's great. What I want to share with you is a couple of things. One is about what we do at the end of a workshop, to using microlearning and nudges to boost that learning and help people actually embed it going forwards. But how we design workshops and programs. So something that we've been really exploring here at VTT is the idea of designing for insight. What do I mean by that? So insight versus action is something quite different. Let's take something really simple like a workshop on how to give feedback. Of course, all of us in the world of L&D are looking for learning transfer, but how do we measure that and what does that look like? So traditionally, what would happen at the end of a giving feedback workshop is a participant would make a commitment, and that commitment would be, I'm going to give Christopher some feedback about his great ways of facilitating events. Okay, and then Christopher, I give you that feedback, success, learning transfer has happened, I've delivered on my action. But it was just one conversation. What else has changed? If we design for insight, what we're looking at here is really thinking about how do we create those moments in a learning experience where people get that aha moment that changes their thinking. So instead of thinking I need to have a conversation with Christopher about his amazing facilitation skills, instead I might leave that meeting thinking, do you know what? I need to give my colleagues more positive feedback more of the time. Or I'm committed to giving more radical candor because I understand the broader implications of that. That's going to lead to way more conversations, way more behavioral change, and much more embedding and better outcomes as a result. Thinking about the end of a learning event, what can we do at that point? Now, often learning events, we get to the end and we're squeezed on time and the actions are really squished at the end. We know that it's really worth putting some time in and thinking about how do we give people the opportunity to think about what's next. A favorite of mine, if you haven't checked it out, is futureme.org. It's a lovely website where you can send yourself a letter with some actions, and you can send it to yourself at any point in the future. A colleague of mine wrote a letter to themselves when his daughter was born and had it arrive 7 years later. Very emotional, beautiful, beautiful thing. And so the final thing for me to share, of course, is the embedding. So what we do is post nudges. This is something that we send to participants after an event, which reminds them of what happened, reminds them of what they committed to, and we're reigniting those brain connections that they created during the learning, but also encouraging them to revisit their actions, revisit those insights, and maybe giving them some further resources to continue that learning and curiosity. The final message that I just want to share with you with all of this is about purpose. So if you're using, for example, a learning tap at any point in that learning experience, just think about the purpose. What are you trying to achieve here? Because in that first stage of creating intrigue, that's very different to creating engagement just before a workshop and then what happens during and after. So purpose is something that we say a lot here at VTT. And if you want to find out more, then you can scan that. But we've got a resource as well that we will send to you afterwards. Thank you, Christopher. Over to you. Let me stop sharing.
No, well, you know what? You get to hang out with me for a minute here because, first of all, everybody, can we get a round of emojis for Catherine? I really loved how you brought this together because, again, I think sometimes we think about digital learning, asynchronous learning in this kind of separate box from the live event. And what you really drove home is this idea of thinking about it holistically as an experience for the end user and saying, yeah, but their journey is a holistic experience. And so how do you incorporate some of these elements to make it more effective? I actually really like the point you use about using this tool and using some of the things you do to actually set expectations for what to expect at the live event. I think a lot of times where I've seen live events go south is people don't really know what to expect. And so you're not really prepared coming into the live event. And the things you described, like you have a better idea of what your audience is feeling like. Are they excited? Where are they at? Are they prepared? I love stuff like that. Some of the questions that came up, we won't go through all of them, but I am curious, how do you balance that? One of the questions that got voted that specific to this topic was, how do you find that right balance to make sure you're not overwhelming somebody?
Yeah.
And, while still making sure that they're engaged and you're kind of nudging them along the way.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's particularly important. It gets more important every day because the reality is the fight for attention is growing. People are so busy and they're getting millions of emails and information and everything. And you can turn them off if you overdo it. I would say the term nudge and micro are key to this. So it really is light touch points and not too many, and keeping it really high level. And one of the ways that we approach this is there's never anything mandatory, apart from like, if we are going down the route of commit, it's like, please just click this to commit. But it's like, it's 20 seconds of your time. And we make it really clear, this will only take 20 seconds, or this video is only, 23 seconds. So people know it's a really, really light touch. And I think letting people know that, they're more likely to engage with it because they know it's just quick.
Okay. Fantastic on that piece. And I love the fact that I think sometimes, I know even with my teams, there's times where it's like, well, how do we get everybody to do it? And I'm like, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is not to force everybody into it. It's to create opportunity. And over time, again, I think sometimes it's easy. The first time you do it, you don't get a high participation. It's like, well, over time, you start to build a brand that people go, oh, if I'm getting something from this group, it's adding value. But again, not trying to hold their feet to the fire and sending 37 emails going, we didn't get everybody to answer this question. I think that's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you again, everybody. If we can get one more round of emojis for Catherine. Catherine, I so appreciated this. That was awesome. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your wisdom.